Too many people still believe this ridiculous myth. They still believe that you can't be a good runner because you strength train, or that running is somehow going to kill your strength gains. Or you get the people who do both and obliterate themselves trying. The issue isn't that running makes you weak or that strength training makes you slow. The issue isn't doing both. The issue is doing both badly. Training to be strong and athletic and conditioned and be able to run well is not a conflict by default, but they come into conflict when volume is managed poorly, intensity is misplaced or misused, and recovery is poorly applied. And so if you stick with me for the next few minutes, I'll explain exactly how to avoid doing this. So the interference effect comes from research that was conducted on concurrent training, and it demonstrated that the adaptations of competing physical qualities can essentially interfere with one another and be dampened slightly when you're training for these competing physical qualities. Basically, our body adapts to a dominant stimulus. So if endurance is prioritized, then our strength gains will be less. If strength is prioritized, then our endurance gains may stagnate slightly. But whilst it is the case that there may be some adaptation competition between these two pathways, you absolutely can train for both effectively. Most interference comes from junk volume, poor sequencing, and too many hard days stacked together. This is a programming problem. It's not a physiological dead end. And you can do both. You just need to be smarter about how you program them. So the first shift that you need to make is how you view strength training. You need to change from thinking, I'm trying to build muscle, to I'm trying to build strength. The craze online at the moment is these hybrid athletes or hybrid coaches, whatever that means. Look, to me, if you strength train and run, you're just an athlete. There's nothing hybrid about it. But anyway, the craze is that they look very big and they talk about how you can look jacked and run really well and compete in high rocks, etc. But this is a bit of a false flag because a lot of these coaches and these athletes were in bodybuilding prior to starting to run and doing these hybrid type events. So most people need to change the way that they think about strength training and what they understand, because bodybuilding does not equal strength all the time. Being big does not equal athleticism. Athleticism is about force production, coordination, being resilient. Training for performance is quite different to training for aesthetics and bodybuilding, even if it can help in small doses. Now, proper strength training can actually really support our running, and strength is expressed when we run through higher force output per stride, better stiffness and elasticity in the tendon, giving greater recoil, lower energy cost at any sort of given speed, and a much, much greater tolerance to injury and niggles that you can pick up. Through strength training, we enhance our neuromuscular efficiency, we increase the muscle power with more forceful strides that require less energy to do. We improve muscle stiffness for better energy return, and we build muscular endurance to maintain that strength for longer. This does mean our strength training needs to look slightly different to the typical bodybuilding work that you see. So we want to use compound lifts throughout our training at low reps and higher effort levels, so higher intensity, to increase max strength. That's going to help improve running economy. We also want some unilateral or single leg patterns present within our strength work to improve force symmetry, pelvic control, and injury resilience. We want to include explosive plyometric work in there to improve our rate of force development, and then also some trunk and hip control and strength work as well. So not thinking about just sit-ups for our core, actually thinking the function of our core, what does it do, and how we can train that to support our running performance as well. You can do a bit of hypertrophy for the upper body if you want to maintain some muscle mass. Look, I used to play rugby, so I want to maintain some of that size that I had, so I do a fair bit of a hypertrophy work on my upper body. That is fine, and that won't negatively impact your running performance too much. But the key thing to start thinking is that strength raises the ceiling. That's what it should do. It should raise your ceiling, not leave you feeling exhausted and spent. So what we can do is just within a particular phase of our training is just dial up or dial down those factors that I've spoken about there. So the next thing to think about is that running is not the enemy of strength if you select the right ones. The old idea that cardio will kill your gains is dated and untrue, especially if you do the previous things I spoke about, your strength training, and select the right runs for your training. So not all runs offer the same type of stress, and I like to look at my runs in a polarized approach. So I have my high intensity work, which involve sort of repeated sprint work, which might build power, reinforce that tendon stiffness, and complement our strength work. And then our VO2 max and high intensity interval works, or tempo and interval runs. So these are going to improve our aerobic ceiling, really build a big aerobic engine and support faster sustainable paces. The other end of the scale, we have our long runs. So you might have heard people talking about zone 2 running. And this is going to build our aerobic base. It should be controlled and not heroic. We're not just trying to blast our long runs as fast as we can. And you've probably heard that you should do 80% of your mileage in those lower intensity. I don't actually do that, because that finding or that recommendation is for people who are covering hundreds of kilometers per week in their running. I have time for 2 runs, and also I'm a heavy runner, 110 kilos, had a lot of ankle injuries in the past. So I do 1 long/steady run, and I do 1 tempo and interval session to get the adaptations I need. That allows me to build my running performance and develop my strength in the gym at the same time. The critical point here is most issues arise when people do too much moderately hard running, and that is what is called junk volume. It's not at the right intensity, or it doesn't stay in any one zone long enough to drive good adaptation. It just builds fatigue. And just before we talk about how we actually program those together, just going to give a special mention to some key nutritional principles you need to think about as well. Remember, you're not training size, and equally we're not trying to get down to a very heavy calorie deficit. That is a surefire way to put yourself in the toilet over the long term. You can't adapt well in a big calorie deficit. Strength training and running are both high energy demand activities. You need to either be in your maintenance or a small surplus of calories. That's going to help improve your tendon health, help your nervous system recover, help you retain your strength while you're doing your running miles. And you also need to be eating enough protein to support tissue recovery, which will enhance force production, and to recover between your sessions. And really emphasize on consistency as opposed to perfection. You should be aiming to eat 1.5 grams of protein per kilo of body weight if you're training, say, 5 times a week. And make sure you track your calories and protein over a week as opposed to focusing on the day to day. And try and look at it across a week as opposed to just those individual. And then also carbs. Carbs are your fuel. Carbs support high quality strength work. They support your higher intensity runs and your VO2 max efforts. So low carbs compromises intensity, which is going to compromise adaptation. And then we come to just talking about how do we program our running and strength training together? Well, we need proper sequencing to start with. So we want to separate our strength and our hard runs wherever possible. We do have to do them on the same day. Always do your strength work first and your running or light aerobic work later, just so that the fatigue from the run isn't compromising your lifts in the gym. And I also like to try and use a high-low structure. So your hard days are your hard work, your easy days are genuinely your easy days, okay? So avoid having a medium hard day every day. My week at the moment looks where I have Monday as a heavy compound lift session, so it's not going to be much volume. It's going to be focused around intensity, lower repetitions. Tuesday is going to be my interval or my tempo run session. Wednesday is then a recovery day. Thursday is more of a moderate intensity unilateral focused weight session. Friday will be my long run. And then Saturday, I'll have a lower intensity hypertrophy session, which is much more focused on upper body, which will be the part of my body that is least fatigued towards the end of the week. Then I have a Sunday as a recovery day, and then we go again the following week. And that structure is going to be great for parents like me who are quite busy, who need to be able to be flexible and move sessions around if needed. It's going to be great for sort of recreational runners who want to introduce strength training into their routine. Great for beginners and great for runners who are sort of under strength and maybe doing some strength training, but it's not quite the right type, or they might be doing the bodybuilding type work and need to switch to a more athletic focus. And just a special mention to recovery. Trying to sleep 7 to 9 hours a week per possible. I'm a parent, I understand it's not always possible, definitely not sometimes, but it reduces your injury risk massively. It's going to help your body adapt to the training you're doing. Make sure your recovery days are actually recovery. Recovery days doesn't mean go and do 5 or 6 different activities that are going to help your recovery. It means recover, rest, okay? And make use of deload weeks. So the guidance is you deload every 4 weeks. I do that for my running. I don't do that for my strength training. I do every 6 to 8 weeks for my strength work. Now, a little bit of a honesty moment. It would be easy for me to sit here and say, follow that and you will get maximal gains in both your running and your strength training. But it is important to acknowledge that actually you won't necessarily maximize your strength and your running to the same level as if you were doing them individually. But they can support each other, and you can get strong enough to run better and still develop a pretty good physique and a pretty good athletic performance, hit some PBs in the gym, and you can run well enough to not sacrifice your strength. Long-term athleticism is always going to beat that short-term optimization. That's really what I'm trying to do with my training and the training of my clients that I work with. So if you're still with me, thank you for making it to the end. Please drop me a follow on Instagram if you want any more help or to learn more about what I do, and check out the caption below this video for more information.